Hello and welcome. It's episode number 14, Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast. Thank you for tuning in again. I am Frances, a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I am Deanna Silverman, licensed clinical social worker.
14 episodes, Deanna. 14.
14's also my favorite number. This is a special episode.
See, and 13's my favorite, so we were meant to be together.
Oh, there you go. I like it. I can't believe episode 14, though. Seriously, let's take a moment. 14 episodes. And it just keeps getting better and better.
We have moved on up, too, because when this started, I was doing this from the radio station I work at, and Deanna was doing it from the closet, and now we both officially have rooms set up in our houses.
Rooms and matching mics.
It's pretty. It really is. Okay, so we're jumping in this week into a topic that I think I've seen an increase of it clinically in practice since the holidays, everybody coming down from all that holiday feeling. And also, I have to be honest, been struggling with it a little bit myself this week, and that would be anger and anger management.
So that's why you picked the topic this week. I was like, Frances, what we always talk about, like, what's the topic? Because we like to be relevant, and if something's like particularly relevant or in the news or one of us are feeling something, we'll talk about it. And I was like, we were just talking about, what should we talk about? And Frances goes, anger. And I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to ask the question. We'll just talk about it in the show.
Well, I think, though, if you're talking about topical too, I mean, we see it all the time, right? We hear about road rage. We hear about people screaming and yelling at each other. Human decency and just common courtesy has kind of gone out the window now with name calling. We did something on trolling. So people get angry and they get emotional. And I think we have a lot of ideas and morals and values and stands that are really wrapped up in it. So to get started, I found a really simple kind of description of anger I think we can work with.
Let's hear it.
So first of all, anger is perfectly normal. Humans experience it. So when someone tells you, I never get angry, go ahead and call bullshit, because they do.
Call bullshit and get angry that they're lying to you. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Even the most zen of person is going to experience anger, but we have differences in the way we handle them and have to manage them. So what happens is anger comes up in, quote, threatening situations. And we experience anger in different ways depending on individual differences, life experiences, and personal beliefs and worldview. So some people do have an issue managing anger, whereas some have developed maybe healthier coping skills from the start. Deanna, when we talk about life experiences and exposure to anger, how was anger expressed like when you were growing up?
I was pretty fortunate to come from a family who we did discuss like our emotions, not too much. I'm the therapist of the family, so I'm pretty much like really, really in touch with my emotions. But it was definitely expressed, but I was fortunate to have like pretty good role models in terms of like things fitting into like the little box. And what I mean by that is the punishment typically did fit the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody got mad, I think if like you went and asked like 100 people, would you get mad at this? If this was done to you, they would all say yes. You know what I mean? Right. So like I was able to see like, oh, okay, there are times and places where you are going to genuinely feel anger or feeling mad. But what's important to note also is that we need to understand that anger, especially in our field of practice, we talk about how like anger is like a secondary symptom or emotion to like what's really going on.
It's like an umbrella. If you think about, it's really easy to throw anger in like, I was just angry. But when you step back from it and allow yourself a little bit of opportunity to be human, like you said, it's a secondary emotion, meaning something else hurt.
Right. I'm sure you say this to clients. I've said this to clients and patients in the past where it's, okay, so you got into a fight and you were angry about what's going on, but like, let's take a moment and reflect what happened. And were you really feeling angry, or was that just how it was being expressed? And what would come out more often than not was that they felt really hurt, disappointed,
disrespected, and sad. Those are some of the ones I've experienced.
Right. So I was reflecting on like my own experiences, and when I was single, if I was dating a guy who didn't respect me when I would like break it off, and I said like, please don't contact me ever again. And if they disrespected me, like I interpreted it as disrespect if they continued to call or like show up to places.
Creepy.
Not only did it come off as disrespectful, but it came off as super duper creepy. And for me, there was nothing romantic about that. I know there are some women who are like, oh, he just wants you that badly, or he's just really going the extra mile. Personally, like if I've told you, like, leave me alone, then leave me alone.
It's not a test.
It's not a test. This isn't a riddle. I'm telling you exactly what needs to be done, which is nothing. Go away. So if you don't respect that, like it would come off like I would get angry and I would like yell at the person because I needed to let them know, no, you're not going to do that. Like I said, like it was a mix of like feeling disrespected because you're not respecting my wishes, and also me being completely freaked out by your creepy ass. Get away from me, you stalker.
See, and that's when we're talking about anger. Typically there's a threat and we respond in with anger to that threat. So that threat could be to your vulnerability. It could be to your emotions, your respect. Growing up, my family was a bunch of yellers. There wasn't physical stuff going on, but it was like the volume was turned up to 11 when people got mad. And then there was never really any talking or processing about it afterwards. So I always saw anger being a bad thing because it escalated to yelling, but then there was never ever any resolution. So in my particular case, when I would get angry, I would turn that inward because I didn't like seeing how it was when you projected it out at people. And so when you don't recognize those feelings and you turn them inward, I think that's where you can get some more of this self-destructive behavior that can come out, leading to things like addiction or depression, anxiety, things like that. But anger is perfectly healthy. In fact, we should experience it because it recognizes that some boundary is being crossed, basically.
Right.
Now, whether or not those boundaries are healthy is a whole other story, and that's for another episode. But anger in it of itself is not a bad thing, but we certainly do need to learn how to manage it. I've found anger has been what pushes me actually to make choices sometimes, Maybe you're being too nice, and then somebody just like pisses you off and you're like, okay, this is it. That's it. Mm-hmm. It lights the fire under your ass to get things done. You'll love this. My youngest is a little impulsive. Mm-hmm. And so he gets mad and he'll yell. And then I'll be like, what are you doing? And he goes, Mom, I have anger issues. I don't want to talk about my feelings right now, Mom. I just have anger issues. And I'm like, no, you back up, kid. That's not how this works.
Right.
And I think we see that too with people, grown ass adults, who they're basically like throwing a tantrum.
Yes.
2-year-old. You have a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, 1-year-old.
1-year-old.
Yeah. So now what does it look like when she gets angry? It's so cute.
No, it's so interesting. Like when I was working in the psych hospital, I would talk to some of my coworkers and administration, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but truly, like when somebody is acting out who have, let's say, a chronic personality disorder and like all their coping is just there is no coping. And the way they get things is by bad behavior and bad attention and yelling and striking out and hitting people. I'd be looking at these grown adults basically throwing a tantrum the way my kid does. It's like almost like primitive in a weird way. It's like what was going on, in their life that now at 40 years old, they still are feeling like the way I get things is by hitting
or yelling
a stranger or yelling. When you were talking about like your family, how our families or the environments that we are raised in, they model how to express our anger, how to deal with our anger. And as adults, when we grow up, we have to make a decision. Was what was modeled for us, is that working for our own life as an adult? Or is there something that maybe is just not sitting well with you anymore? And the more and more I've been like sitting here reflecting back, my mom was, when she was alive, like she was one of my best friends and so loving and caring. But when she would get angry, she would get like really, really mean. And there was no hitting, but she didn't really do this so much with me. But my parents got divorced when I was in junior high, and like leading up to their divorce, they would get into like yelling matches, and I would hear like my mom calling my dad a name, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember growing up thinking, people are going to make you angry and it's okay, but I'm never, ever, ever going to, I'm going to try really, really hard not to call people names, you know, cut straight to the jugular. And I'm going to, we're arguing, or we got into an argument about something over here in, you know, category A. Well, I'm not going to start bashing your physical appearance.
You had rules of engagement.
Right. And my mom didn't even do it that often, but she did it enough for me to go, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that.
It's only in adulthood. I've thrown things twice, and it's never been at someone. It was like when I finally got into a room by myself and I just threw something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in really triggering situations and thinking about like self-harming, because sometimes people do that. They turn it inward. Just to give like a story. And what's funny about this story I'm about to share is that it was told so frequently and as a joke that it was just a normal part of my childhood that I don't remember. I don't even know if I was born at the time, to be honest. So it was a long time ago. But I heard the story so much and it was just normal. So when my mom was alive, she couldn't bend her ring finger and her pinky finger on her left hand. She's also left-handed. And she did that because the way that happened was she got so angry at my dad that she stabbed a cabinet and her hand went over the blade.
Oh, no.
And
I got the chills.
My dad, okay, so I remember that story from like before kindergarten. And I remember it just being normal. And mom got mad and they laugh about it. Mom got so mad she like stabbed the cabinet with the knife. And up until the day she died, she couldn't move her hand all the way.
No. Yeah.
And it was so normalized. It was so normalized. And I never saw my mom ever get like that. But I know that, I mean, they would scream and yell. And so I just knew I didn't like that. But that's just an example of how normalized it is. This is how people get to situations too, where like hitting is okay when you're angry because it's just normalized.
Punching a wall. I mean, I've heard hundreds of accounts of people who punch walls when they're angry. I wasn't raised in a family that punched walls, but I mean, working in this field and doing home visits, I mean, it's commonplace where you would walk into a house and there's like a hole in the door.
Absolutely.
Holes up and down the walls. And I'm not judging it, but it would always make me take pause to be like, what's going on in here, you know?
Yeah. And as we mentioned just a few minutes ago, anger is a secondary emotion. It also helps us know when we have like boundaries that have been crossed. So what we want to do today is to help give some examples. And we're going to share some stories that are more funny and some that like will hit you in the gut to kind of give you an idea of how to manage anger, because it can help you propel, I think, forward in personal growth. It can also, when you have relationships, give you some red flags for how people in your life manage anger. It can also be helpful in trying to model the behavior that is important for if you're raising little ones, because they do pick up on it. And they also do need to have coping skills that are instilled from a young age. So if you have a kid that's throwing a tantrum at 2 and you don't get that under control, imagine what a 15-year-old tantrum looks like. That's when you get kids that get aggressive and come at their parents and stuff. In some ways, because we have a duty as parents to teach healthy coping skills through all of the ages.
Right.
So how do you experience anger physically, Deanna? Like, where does it come out in you? Like physiologically? Because it does trigger a response.
Yeah. Well, when I feel angry, my heart races. I'll get like shaky. I'll usually like, if I'm like laying down and something pisses me off, Like I usually like will pop right up and like start pacing around, and my brain will start going a million miles a minute. And my impulse is to immediately, like, let's say something happened that pissed me off or made me angry, but the person like isn't in my house. Like, so my impulse would be to like call them or fire off a text like immediately. At 34 years old, I've developed better coping and recognize my impulsivity or impulsiveness that lives within me. So I know it's probably not the best thing to fire off a text message like in the moment of anger.
So like sometimes when you want to call someone and it goes to voicemail, that is life intervening on your behalf.
Yes, for real. I was going to ask you, like, have you ever been in a physical altercation? Like have you ever been in a fight before?
I've never been in a fight.
I've never been in a fight either. And for me, like, I know tons of people out there like have or engage in that. I just personally don't condone it at all. It's just disturbing to me. I don't really.
So I haven't been in me and my siblings fought. Now my older sisters, there was a story of my dad having to put a piece of luggage between the two of them because they were slugging it out as teenagers.
But like strangers. Like when I see like strangers fighting,
it's your family. It's fine.
Yeah, with your family, just like kick each other's asses. No, I'm totally kidding. Like, don't kick your sibling's ass. In my head, though, there is somewhat of a difference, with like sibling rivalry and just like duking it out. But then like people in public, like I remember going to like LA Dodgers games and like sporting events and always being a little bit nervous, especially if it was like an important game. I would always get nervous walking to the stadium or away from the stadium. There's always people just looking for a fight. And I'm a nervous Nelly, so I always think everyone like has a gun, or it's disturbing to me, like where you hear people get knocked out and have brain damage, or I don't want to like, get too off topic here, but I just want to say like, I just completely don't condone violence. And I would like to see everybody get to a place where
just hug it out.
Just hug it out, man. Everyone needs to just like carry a pillow with them and beat the shit out of the pillow if you need to, but not somebody else. You could take somebody's life, maybe unintentionally. Maybe you wanted to kick their ass. You could freaking knock them out and kill somebody. Now you're going to jail because you just murdered someone. Think about it.
I love how you took it all the way to there. But
that's me though. I just took it too now. Yeah, sorry.
To answer your question, physical fight, no. I've been really good at diffusing situations. I've learned that's kind of my style, is to be a little self-deprecating, and I can bring it back.
Me too.
That's why we get along so well. I do get nervous when I'm places. I have been around people who like to look for a fight, and that's not anything I want a part of. I saw something the other day though when I was driving, and I was just like, this son of a bitch. It was somebody who had one of those license plate frames, and it said, "My grandkids can kick your grandkids' ass." And my guess is that was a take on, like the honor roll, my kid's an honor roll student or something. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, what kind of message are you sending? Really? What kind of message are you? That's how proud you are of your grandchildren, that they can go out and like bully people?
I know. I have the same response to it. And then I'm not trying, I just want to like have a conversation with that person. Like, do you realize what you're putting out there? Like maybe they don't realize it, and maybe they need to be like, bring their attention to how like detrimental this could be.
I was thinking maybe his kids in judo, and they were doing that, but still that kind of blatant, just institutionalized okayness with it.
Right.
Made me irritated. So you said physically, though, when we talk about like physical anger and how it's expressed, many people experience it in different ways. Sometimes, and a lot of it's tied to the fight or flight response. Our adrenaline rushes, we get flushed, we're ready to roll.
What I want to say too is when I get angry, I would say 95% of the time it's because I'm hurt. And I have to tell myself this often. Like my husband and I, if we get into an argument, I don't know, maybe it's like my sheer size. I'm like not a petite girl, or because I'm loud and I have a dominating like personality. Like there's been times where like I'll get into arguments with people and I am genuinely hurt, but the way that I communicate is so direct and so like straight to the point because I just want to try to resolve this, that I oftentimes don't take an account right out of the gate that like they might be defensive, even though I'm not looking to drag this out. I'm coming to the person to actually resolve it. But sometimes I have to tell myself like, this isn't like, sometimes this isn't working. Like even me being direct, like maybe I need to put on the waterworks or something. Maybe like I need to like dull this down and cry and be, I don't know. Do you know what I'm getting at?
I do, because you and I are so opposite on so many ways. And what's really funny is if you look at Deanna and I think our personalities and our look are supposed to be swapped, because people think that I've been in street fights and like
why?
I don't know, but just if you Google us and you'll see, you saying that, like you get all defensive, like people tell me I look scary all the time. It's my resting bitch face. But
I do have a resting bitch face for sure, but maybe it's just, that's interesting that you're saying
But what I was going to get to is you said that you need to turn on the tears a little, right?
Yeah.
For me, up until
your waterworks,
I would have this physiological response when I would get angry and mad. And I think it's tied back to a lot of times I would just turn it inside and my eyes would water. And trust me, I was not crying. I was ready to rip someone's head off. But my eyes would water. And so then what would happen is the person on the other end starts treating me in a whole different way, kind of babying me.
Yes, because you had the teary eyes.
And I was like, don't you fucking dare right now. My physiological response is not cooperating with what's going on inside.
Right. See, I'm the opposite. Yeah, I have like no glassy eyeballs. They're like a matte finish. Like people are like, oh, she's angry, you know? And like actually inside, I am the hurt person that wants to cry, but my physical response or like presentation is not sad at all.
See, we are exact opposites.
Yeah. Like, so I have to literally, there has been times where I will pinch my cheeks to get them really red. One time I sprayed my face with like a water bottle, just like,
what was the fight? Who were you having the fight with?
Like back in my 20s, it was with a boyfriend. And like, once again, it's like with my husband. Like, you know, recently we got into an argument and he was just like, you need to be nicer. And like, I'd be like, I'm mad. Like, I'm mad. What do you want me to be nice? Like, I've gotten up to this point where now I'm upset. And he never made me angry, but it appeared like I was angry. But no, I was just frustrated. There was some like miscommunication that we have now resolved. But it was like, this isn't working. He is experiencing this as me coming after him and like being naggy,
aggressive.
And it was like, no, that's not what it is. I need to get in like the fetal position, start crying or something, and I can't do it.
So you channel some of your inner Frances, and I'll channel some of my inner Deanna, and we'll find a balance somewhere in there. Oh gosh. Yeah. So the other thing to think about when you're trying to really get a handle on if you think of anger as the umbrella and the feelings you're feeling under it, I think this is all part of kind of getting a better grip on our understandings of anger. And then the physiological response, meaning like, am I puffing up because I want to fight somebody? Am I getting my adrenaline rush because I want to run out the door? Does my stomach hurt? Am I getting teary-eyed even though I'm real angry? But kind of understanding that, because I think our emotions need to have that kind of release, and then we can cope with it. Now that release doesn't mean going off on somebody. In fact, I'm probably too nice when I'm angry because I don't want anything that comes out of my mouth to be used against me. So I'm like ultra calculated.
You're calculating. I hear you. And I'm so awkward that like I really try to use my words like in a therapeutic way. And what I mean by therapeutic is just productive. I'm just not trying to make this any bigger than it needs to be. but my feelings are hurt. And I'm the type of person where if my feelings are hurt and I care about somebody, then I want my feelings not to be hurt. Because if I don't get my feelings addressed and this clarified, then I don't want to hold it in. Because what ends up happening to me is I become resentful, and it's like feeling oversensitive because you're almost like looking to be disappointed again.
Oh yeah.
I hate that feeling. I hate it. And when I care about people, like I don't want that in between us. But you also need to realize you are going to hurt people and people are going to hurt you. You just need to take inventory on like what's worth it and what's not. And if you care about somebody, we should work towards expressing our anger in productive ways to try to get to some type of resolution. And it's hard. It's a skill.
It takes time. And we're going to get into 10, you said 10 things to help with anger management. But one thing I wanted to go off on for a second, you were talking about how resentment works and how we have to decide, sometimes we need to let things go. Sometimes we need to address real issues. But if I had this happen in my practice this week and I came up with it on a whim and I was like, this is genius. So if you're a couple, for instance, and you guys are having a real rough patch and that person's breathing just drives you crazy, right? Everything bugs you. What we came up with is in a day, they each get 3 points and they can cash in those points when their partner, because they're trying to learn new ways of communicating and they're really stressed out and it takes time to learn new patterns and they're both super sensitive to each other. So I said, you get 3 points. So if it really bugs you that he didn't hit the start on the laundry and that bugs you because it's messed up you doing laundry, then you go tell him, but you're using 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
And if she says something that's condescending and you can't pass, then be like, that's not very nice. You need to stop that. But you have to like pace out your points and then let some of the other stuff kind of go. Does that make sense? Because if every battle is a war,
you got to pick your battles.
Progress.
Yeah, you have to pick your battles. Because if you don't pick your battles, you just get into this cycle of just fighting nonstop over big stuff, over little stuff, over the way people are breathing.
Do you have to chew your food that way?
Oh God, right? I've always kind of assumed that like if you get to the point of like, I'm going to flip out just based on the person's breathing patterns, I'm open to being wrong. But like I've always kind of assumed like if you've gotten to that point, there's a lot that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, you are definitely at the overflow point. So you have, explain to me, 10 what?
Oh, I was looking up like anger management, 10 tips to like tame your temper.
Okay.
So I just wanted to like quickly go through the 10 things, give our personal experiences and just kind of like dive into into what they're talking about to give it a little bit more meat or substance. So,
and also so we can embarrass ourselves with our stories that will come forward.
Exactly. So number 1 is think before you speak, right? How many times have we had people be like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to say that. Just kind of,
I was angry.
I was angry.
Yeah. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right. Once it's out, it's out. You got to remember that.
The thing that I tell myself, and I had to learn this in my own personal relationships, is I'm not going to give them the bullets to shoot me with. Meaning, I know if I call them something, I'm going to regret it because then they're going to be able to throw it back at me. So again, this goes back to like my like being very trying to be calm and not calculated, but particular about the words coming out of my mouth.
This is important to note. You may have an amazing point. And if somebody is right or wrong and we see the argument in front of us and you give us your argument and we're like, oh, you're for sure right. You should go with that. Like debate class, like you're going to win that debate. If you have your argument and then you start calling somebody like a fucking asshole, you lose the battle. It's
all of it.
All of it. It's gone. It doesn't even matter if you're right. When you start yelling at people and calling them names, especially in front of other people, you've lost it. And no one did that but you. And I am a lot of things. And one of them is pretty stubborn and also pretty competitive. And I do like to be right, but I am okay with being wrong. But if I know for sure I'm right and I'm out to like prove a point or just get my point across, I'm going to do everything in my power not to lose it. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like count to 10, count to 10, count to 10.
And believe me, Frances and I, like, I don't want to speak for you, Frances, but I will speak for myself. Believe me, when I get angry, you know how easy it would be for me to just start calling people bad names and like just being this crazy. It's so easy. Like all of us have pent up stuff in us. Every single person other than like Gandhi or Mother Teresa, maybe even them. I think we've actually, like before the podcast, you and I connected on this level where we were like, I like to challenge myself. When someone pisses me off, the easy thing that could be done is to call them names or like hit below the belt. But what I like to do is challenge myself where I'm like, no, I'm going to win this without even like raising my voice. I'm not going to call you a name, but afterwards you're going to be like, whoa, what the fuck did they just do? And you just walk away and there's no dust. Nothing got kicked up. No one got swung at, for God's sakes. No one got called a name, but like we won that. Just buried them without even raising our voice.
I distinctly remember a fight with one of my exes where he was trying to get me angry because that was his pattern, right? And I was like, oh, game on, motherfucker, because that ain't happening in my head.
I am not breaking.
And he said something mean and I go, what are you trying to do right now? Like, are you trying to hurt my feelings so I call you mean things? Are you trying to do that so that you can throw that in my face? Because I love you too much to do that.
Did that make him more angry? Because you know there's people out there too where it's like
right now there was this right now
maniacal, like
right now I'm sure that half of the audience went and the other went, ooh, I'm gonna use that. Because what are you gonna do? What are you gonna come back at me with? How dare you tell me you love me?
I know, but you know what? There's something to be said here. I've had an ex-boyfriend who had pretty significant, just like an all-out inability to like express himself in like a normal adult fashion. And he would get really angry and yell, and it was just ugly. And nothing that I did would work. If I yelled, he would just yell out louder. But if I was calm, it also made him angry. And so at that point, I was like, bye. This is
bye, Felicia.
Yeah, exactly. But there are people, just know that like there are people out there that like no matter what you do, you can't win. And that's also a good thing to point out. It's we can work on our own anger. But if you're in a relationship with somebody who has anger issues and they're just unwilling to work at it at all, you need to take some healthy inventory of what you're willing to put up with, especially if you have children, what
you're willing to put them through.
What you're willing to expose them to, because that's a whole other topic, guys, but please don't do that. Anyhow, so number 1, think before you speak. Number 2, once you're calm, express your anger. I'm just going to read it. It says, as soon as you're thinking clearly, which may take a year. No, I'm kidding. But express your frustration in an assertive but non-confrontational way. State your concerns and needs clearly and directly without hurting others or trying to control them.
I heard this from a friend of mine who's an amazing therapist. And she said that what she'll do is be like, I know you're angry, but we cannot talk about this if you're yelling at me. So when you've had your time to calm down, we'll come back and talk about it. Because really, when you are in that screaming and yelling, nothing gets communicated correctly.
Yeah. I think I actually talked about that on an old episode, on a past episode where I had a patient in the hospital who was yelling and screaming.
Yep.
And I just went, nope, I am leaving. I do not talk to you this way. This is disrespectful for you to yell at me. I will come back when you're ready. Goodbye. And pretty much just cut him off and just walked out. Because first of all, I'm not going to expose myself to that. But secondly, like nothing's going to get done.
Yeah. And you could use that in your personal situations too. I've used that with my kids when my son with anger issues, self-diagnosed anger issues, when you can talk to me nicely, we'll talk. But then the flip side of that is, though, you need to follow up with the talking.
And also you need to be aware that just as like when my husband gets mad at me because of my tone, when I'm upset about something and I'm like, what I'm trying to say is understand that there's a difference between somebody being irate and belligerent and calling you names and just being uncontrolled. And then there's somebody who's expressing themselves and trying to resolve something, and maybe their tone is a little bit louder than normal, but they're not yelling and they're not calling you names. It's a natural kind of expression of them feeling hurt, and that's okay. It's contextual. Like it makes sense with what's going on.
And so sometimes just a little reminder, and this is why I think it's so important to have meta communication, which is communication about communication. Look, so me and Deanna are in an argument and she's a little louder and I can be like, hey, can you bring it down a little bit and we can continue this? Oh man, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right.
And you don't even notice. All right. What do you got next?
3, get some exercise. Work out, exercise the demon. Ace Ventura, guys. I'm not getting hyper religious here. Exercise can help reduce stress. No joke. I was pissed off a couple of days ago and I went downstairs and I put on dance.
You turned on dance. You were dancing.
Yeah. Well, what was that? Is on the PS4, the dance?
I don't have any.
Dance off, whatever. It's so goofy. And after like 7 songs, I was sweaty and just tired. And it also like lifted my mood because it was like music and I'm dancing and my kid was being funny and we were cracking up because it has like a playback reel where it shows me dancing and shows my like kid in the background like trying to eat everything and
then your husband changing your diaper.
Yes.
And then Deanna's got some sweet dance moves. See, I learned in one of our podcasts that you were a hip hop dancer and I could see it and I have no moves.
My God. Cat out of the bag. Yes.
Exercise for me, I have to do it 5 to 6 days a week. And I'm neurotic about it because it keeps me in check. When I'm angry, I go work out because it always makes me feel better. I burn off some of that energy. If I'm just sitting with it, it's not helpful. And then that's when like my music selection comes in handy too. I listen to angry music when I'm angry. It makes me run faster.
Right. And we also like have to take note of the angry music when you're angry. Is it serving like a healthy purpose?
For me, it's cathartic.
So for you, it's cathartic. Same thing with me. I'm able to listen to angry music when I'm angry and it be okay. But I have seen people, especially like when I was working once again in the psych hospital, I reference that a lot because it's so like literally I just quit 2 weeks ago, so I'm thinking a lot. And people would get angry and only listen to like scary music or just like really heavy, dark,
aggressive, yeah.
And then I would ask them, well, how do you feel after you listen to those songs? And they're like, more angry, like, oh, I'm just like ripping the house apart. And it's like, well, maybe it's time to make some different choices. Whereas like you and I can listen to angry music and find something in the lyrics that make us feel more connected or grounded or validated.
Right.
And then
it's a processing moment.
Feel better. Yeah.
And so I think that's important to keep that in mind when you're using music to kind of help with some of your emotions. Make sure at the end you feel better, like you've processed something.
Right.
As opposed to making it worse. So we got exercise on there. One more reason why you should get your heart rate up.
Yeah. All right. So 4, take a time out. Timeouts aren't just for kids. Give yourself some short breaks during times of the day that tend to be stressful. A few moments of quiet time may help you feel better prepared to handle what's ahead without getting irritated or angry. I like that one. I used to get really pissed off. Sounds weird saying that, but like I used to get mad thinking about something like take a time out or like walk away. And I like, that sounds stupid or like corny. How does that even help? But as I've gotten older, I'm still stubborn, but a little less stubborn. I've realized, okay, let's just try this out. And the few times that I've used it, it's been really helpful.
As a mom to older kids, because I know Micah's only a little over 1, mine are going to be 10 and 8. I'll flat tell them now, I'm like, mom needs a timeout. You need to go in that part of the house and you need to leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
And when I only had one, I remember one time she was in her room screaming into a pillow. She was mad. And so I went into my room and I was like, I'm going to try that too.
And it worked?
It worked beautifully.
Yeah.
Because it was either that or have a meltdown.
Right.
So I had a meltdown in my pillow.
Yeah. I've done that for sure. All right, 5, identify possible solutions. Instead of focusing on what made you mad, work on resolving the issue at hand. Once again, this isn't just like, I'm angry and now I just need to focus on the anger. No, this is a moment for you to, once again, take a time out, reflect on what has brought you to this point, and really tap into what is going on. So they give like an example. If your partner is always late for dinner every single night, then here is a possible solution. Schedule the meals a little bit later in the evening.
Who knew?
Who knew? A lot of this stuff is simple, but it's hard to remember these things when we're pissed.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is a big one. Stick with I statements. Anybody who's been in therapy has probably heard this one. To avoid criticizing or placing blame, which might only like increase the tension or the anger or the fight, what we will tell people is try to use I statements to describe the problem. So you want to be like respectful and specific. Okay, so for example, I'm upset that you left the table without offering to help with the dishes, instead of you never do any housework. And also, I'm using this from my own personal experience. The word never, it's so definitive. Like there's no room. When you use the word never, you never do the housework. My issue might be that I need more help with the housework because maybe my husband is doing like 2 or 3 things when I need him to help me with 5 things, like in a week's time. So if I get pissed off into a place where like now I'm angry and I'm yelling and I say you never do any housework, then I'm for sure going to lose him in this argument or disagreement or whatever we're having, because now he needs to be defensive and justify the 3 things that he has done. And now he's arguing towards the fact that I have hurt his feelings or made him mad because now I'm saying he hasn't done anything.
It's put him on the defensive, much like when you say when you call someone a name.
Right.
So,
it's like you lose, once again, like you're losing the battle and making things very, very difficult for yourself to get to a place of resolution.
Do yourself a favor. If you're listening and going, what, I need more examples of I statements, just Google I statements and you start working these into your conversations in any time where there's conflict. And it can be incredibly helpful in improving healthy communication patterns.
Right. 7, don't hold a grudge. Wow. Okay. I need my grandma to listen to this podcast. She has like an Olympic medal in grudge holding. In fact, I actually learned from family members who have held grudges that have literally lasted decades. I'm like the non-grudge holder. Like I don't care what I've been through with people. Like I tend to just always just go, life is short. You said I'm sorry. Let's move on. I'm sorry. And like, let's be friends. I think that's why like I don't have enemies, like I don't have frenemies, whatever it is. It's just like, what? I don't have time for that. Let's just move on.
And I think what's important is you can you can decide I'm not going to hold a grudge, but also decide you don't want anything else to do with that person.
Right.
So,
and you can like,
this is all the time.
Right.
Or
like
a clean slate.
For example, like you don't have to hold a grudge and somebody might have like hurt you to the point where you don't want a relationship with them ever again or a friendship. But there's some forgiveness that needs to be done there. And what I mean by that is when we don't forgive people, and I don't want people to hear me say this and like think that I'm saying this very lightly, because when we forgive people for like major hurtful things they've done, it's a huge, huge step in our own personal healing. So I'm not trying to minimize this at all.
Forgiveness is for you, not the other person.
Exactly. So when you do get to a point of forgiving somebody, you have now given yourself the opportunity to let go of all that pent up unresolved emotion that was living inside of you. You have forgiven them. You are moving on. And that is it. I mean, literally, this is what even the article says. This is forgiveness is a powerful tool. If you allow anger and other negative feelings to crowd out positive feelings, you might find yourself swallowed up by your own bitterness or sense of injustice. I really like that word, the injustice, because I myself get really hung up on the injustices in the world that we see, whether it's like a micro level or macro or like huge injustices in the world or whatever. So, but if you can forgive someone who has angered you, you might both learn from the situation and strengthen your relationship. So, it all has to do with the context and what's going on. If you get into an argument with your friend who you very much care about, it's worth resolving, then resolve it and move on. And it could strengthen the friendship because now you both know like the boundaries and what can hurt each other. And so you try to avoid those things because you genuinely care about the person. If somebody has done something to you that is so painful and so hurtful and you don't want the relationship, then by coming to some level of like forgiveness of what has transpired, then you are releasing all of that pent up emotion that lives within you and it's gone. It's released from you. And now so they just have to deal with their own truth.
Move forward and heal from it.
8, use humor to release tension. This
yes.
one, of course, is our favorite.
Can I give you a story of this real quick?
Yes.
I was hosting a bar night for football when at one point when I have done my radio career, and I was on the microphone and this guy was really being obnoxious. So I made a joke about him on the microphone, right? Mm-hmm. And his wife comes up to me in some bedazzled jersey, feeling a little tough because she's going to get in my face.
Uh-oh.
And she's going to get in my face because I disrespected her man.
Oh, boy.
And so I got on the microphone and I don't remember what I said, but I diffused it and it made it kind of laugh. And I wasn't really being a bully, but, and I'm going to take that. I was not being a bully, but I used humor to diffuse it. And you could tell she just shrunk. Because, bitch, I'd have hurt you.
What did you say?
I don't remember what it was exactly, but I was like, Mal, apparently this guy at the table, like I really offended him. So much so his wife had to come stand up for him. So I'm sorry.
There is a skill there, right? You are able to like de-escalate situations and also de-escalate it in your own head. I'm real self-deprecating and I use it as like it's like a coping mechanism.
It diffuses situations.
Right. And so oftentimes like I have to take stock in like sometimes I'll have unrealistic expectations of people because maybe I hold myself to like a high standard of how I treat others that when it doesn't get reciprocated, I feel this injustice and I'm hurt and yada, yada, yada. So then I'll make self-deprecating jokes about like my unrealistic expectations of people. Or like I'm failing because I don't have like an example to pull out of my butt right now, but it's just like a way for me to laugh at myself and be like, ah.
So there was one time I was having a showdown with my son over eating teriyaki beef. Okay. And this kid is a natural at diffusing things. And it had become like a 30-minute showdown. And at this point I'm like, you're going to try it. By the way, teriyaki beef is his favorite thing that I make now. And we're sitting at the table. And at this point I have him sitting at the table looking at me and I'm like, you are going to try this. And I'm not, we're in a head, like just stalemate. And he looks at me and he goes, Mom, don't you need to go exercise?
He called you out.
And I just started laughing. And then he started laughing and it just like poof, disappeared. And then I was like, can you try the teriyaki beef now?
Right.
And he tried it. And I did need to go exercise.
Everyone's guard was down and you were just able to like move on.
And he didn't I could have been like, how dare you, blah, 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 as a parent and whatnot. And it was a beautiful moment because I have learned with him, I just need to diffuse it with anger. And that's with diffuse it with anger, diffuse the anger with humor. And that's with a kid.
Right. Number 9, practice relaxation skills. Okay, so this is what we hear all the time. Take a walk, do some deep breathing exercises, imagine a relaxing scene. The relaxing scene has never worked for me, by the way, but I've heard it has worked. But what has worked after I stopped being a stubborn brat is actually trying the deep breathing exercises. And that helps me both manage any kind of anger and also helps with insomnia.
Real quick, box breathing is something that's super easy. That's a count of 4. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, stay empty for 4. And it can be helpful. And then in terms of one thing I've found that's been useful, I know you said you can't really do the imaginary thing. You can Google on YouTube even like lots of really relaxing sounds. So like ocean waves. A rainy day.
That does work for me, actually.
Yeah.
Sounds.
So that can help with the picturing a peaceful place.
Also, finding a random fluffy dog. Find a dog and hug the dog.
Google kittens and puppies.
Yeah, I do that. I do that. I YouTube puppies. And when I was working at the hospital, they had a therapy dog that would come visit the patients. And I'm not kidding. I'd be like walking to another patient's room or something, and I had a particularly stressful day, and I would see that therapy dog and I would melt. I would just be like, oh, Shabobo. Like, okay, come here for hugs. And then I would be okay. All right. Number 10, know when to seek help. Learning to control anger is a challenge for everyone at times. Seek help for anger issues if your anger seems out of control. So listen, guys, if your anger is causing problems with your relationships, if you're not able to manage your anger at work, you can't hold a job because of your anger, you're getting into legal problems because of your anger, this is a pretty good time to start doing some really, really significant reflection and say, this is not working for me anymore. Here's the empowering part. You can change this. This is not a life sentence. These things you can control, but you do have to first get to the place where you're acknowledging how it's not working for you.
And on that side too, the way you brought up is more of like an external expression of anger. If you're turning it more internal, which as I mentioned earlier was kind of my thing, if you're driven to, dysfunctional things like addiction or self-harm, or you can tell it's really bringing you down from the outside in, that could be a red flag too. We want to direct you to, there's lots of resources out there for therapy. You can look in your community, a quick Google search of anger management. And we mentioned I statements can be useful. And then the last thing I want to just throw out there, we kind of talked about this where you stop and think about your feelings. That's a particular type of therapy that's called cognitive behavioral therapy, which really helps you kind of separate your actions from your feelings, from your behaviors. So as we kind of wrap that up, there you go. Before we end,
we're going to do our good news feed.
Yes.
Okay. So real quick, the story that I chose was what started off as really sad and scary, but ended up, what's the word I'm looking for? It just made me feel good. So there were 2 bears. I'm sure there were a lot of bears, but these 2 bears in this article were highlighted, were badly burned in the Thomas fire, that happened out in Ventura, which is where I live. So this kind of obviously it hits close to home. And their little paws sustained 3rd-degree burns. And so they couldn't even like stand up and walk. Aww. And so when they got taken in to be treated, they were projecting that this would be like 6 months for them to heal. And what they did was they used like a holistic approach, and they took fish skin, and I don't know if they like sutured it onto their paws, but they basically attached it. It's like almost like skin grafting, but like with fish. And because there's like high levels of like collagen and like healing components in the fish skin, within like, I think it was like 6 weeks, the bears totally healed and they just got released back into the forest. So I'm just happy that the bears survived. When those fires were going on, I just like, it was just chaos. And I was just getting in my head thinking about all the animals that were fleeing and got hurt, and it broke my heart. So this was a good story for the good news feed for this week.
I have a story coming out of celebrity news, and I don't know if you've heard, but Keanu Reeves is like one of these guys that they say is just a good guy in Hollywood, lives kind of just an average type lifestyle. There's been stories about how he's taken pay cuts so people can get paid more on set, how he's foot the bill for props and things that they need. But this story comes out. He's gone undercover as a hero for 15 years. He's been this anonymous donor for kids with cancer. It was following his sister's diagnosis of leukemia, and wanting to remain anonymous, he reportedly never attached his name to a nonprofit foundation that he set up to fund cancer research and care for children in hospitals. Oh. So the story has come out, that just one more amazing, cool thing. And he wasn't looking for the accolades. Somebody actually did some research and found it out. So I don't,
so now he's not anonymous anymore. He's like,
but for 15 years.
But for 15 years. Yeah, just doing it completely anonymous. Because. That's awesome. Oh, I like that. Thank you for sharing.
Plus, he's just a badass. He's just a badass. He does like so many of his own stunts and stuff. He's just cool. All right. So that wraps it up.
Dude.
Episode number 14.
14.
All done.
One. Woohoo.
So go ahead and find us online. You can subscribe, find us on iTunes, Google Play. We're also on YouTube and a bunch of others. And please, those ratings, we do like them. And oh yeah, BuzzFeed is looking for the most underrated podcast of 2018. So if you find us on Instagram.
Right. I don't know when they're like releasing that, but if you Google like BuzzFeed underrated podcast, it'll pop up and then you can vote for us. So that would be rad, obviously. I also just recently made an Instagram page for our podcast show. It's Humanitarians Podcast on Instagram. So follow that. Once again, I'm Hilarious Humanitarian on Instagram, and Frances is Shut Up Skippy. And we will see you guys next week.
Oh, one thing we forgot.
What?
Quick little thing that came in online, because we get like the love from our listeners.
Oh yeah, we forgot. How did I forget that?
It's okay.
You got one?
It says, "Wish I found this podcast sooner."
Oh,
the end.
We love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.